Strange developments in this story from the Navy Yard this morning. Let's bring in former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Mayor Giuliani, good to have you with us this morning.
Nice to be with you, Martha.
So it looks like this is, at least at first blush, it appears to be just a person who was on edge,
right,
who jumped the gun, heard a loud noise, and the response was phenomenal this morning. So what do we learn from all this?
Well, first of all, I was at the Navy Yard a year ago and spent the day inspecting it and making recommendations about security. Security is fabulous at the Navy Yard. It's a triple redundancy to get in, a couple of other things that I can't mention. So when I first heard this, I said, this is either not true or it's an inside job. It's somebody who has access.
Right.
Having spent that much time in the Navy Yard, the people are on edge. Why wouldn't you be? It's only a year and a half ago that this happened. So I can see why a person hearing a loud noise would call it in. We probably would rather have him do that than have heard a loud noise, ignore it, and it's a shooting. The response was, some people said it was an over-response. It was not. It was exactly the response that there should be if there was a shooting. This person sounds like an innocent person, but could some of these people calling in be doing it to test us? That's a possibility. And are we under real threat? We would have to be foolish not to think we're under real threat with everything we're hearing from the CIA, from the federal government, from New York City. If you look around New York City, which, I know the Kelly response that he set up and what Bratton has done, you can see
absolutely
that they are on the kind of alert that we used to be on New Year's Eve. Remember in 2000, we had a threat of a terrorist attack. And there were a massive number of police in a lot of hidden places.
So the concern is, when you look at this, what you mentioned, is somebody testing the system, or is somebody intentionally making these phone calls? We saw something similar at the White House when they evacuated the briefing room, something similar at Capitol Hill. So now you've got the Navy Yard, Capitol Hill, and the White House, all of which we have watched be tested over the last month or so. It's either somebody doing that intentionally, or if not, it is giving a nice blueprint for what reaction looks like for anybody who would want to do us harm, right?
It's hard to say. This one, from the little bit we know, doesn't sound like it was intentional. It sounds like it was a mistake, and almost an understandable mistake if the facts turn out to be heard a noise, called.
Yeah.
The others I can't tell you. ISIS wants to attack the United States. They have announced it. They've said it. We do not have information about a specific attack, meaning an attack on New York, an attack on Boston, an attack on Chicago. But it does appear to me that we have information that they specifically are going to attack the United States. You can see that in all the preparations that we're making. And I think that Americans should go about their lives the way we normally would, because the chances that you're going to be the one or less than about 10 other ways you can die.
But doesn't this give them, in any scenario, it gives them a very good indication of what they should expect?
Yes. Here's
what happens. Watch, they can watch the police presence. They watch how it gathers. They can see, they can learn a lot from this. Can they not?
Absolutely, and they will. There's no question that those videotapes will be sitting somewhere in Yemen and Afghanistan, and people will be going over them. These people are highly skilled at what they do.
When you see what happened in Tunisia on the beach, and you have British tourists, German tourists among those who were slaughtered by a guy who walked up the beach in shorts and a black shirt with an AK-47 or whatever rifle. I'm not sure if that's the exact machinery that he was using. It could happen anywhere.
It could happen anywhere.
Anywhere.
The only thing I can say that gives any comfort at all is the police and the FBI gather intelligence much better than they did before September 11. They share it much more than they used to. And we have stopped a lot of attacks, meaning the U.S. has stopped a lot of attacks. As President Bush always said, and President Obama, you're never going to be right 100% of the time, no matter how good our response. So we have to assume, and pray to God it's not a big one, that something is going to happen here, which means we should be more engaged in taking ISIS out.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you.
We should have been doing it. We should have been doing it 3 years ago when John McCain and Lindsey Graham wanted the president to put troops in Syria and cut this thing off right at the very beginning. We should be using our special forces, who are magnificent. And I believe if the United States wanted to, in 6 months it could take out ISIS completely. It's not like Iran. Long term, I consider Iran the great threat to America. ISIS is a threat that a good president, with the military we have, could take out in 6 months.
We have reports now that the Gulf states, that Saudi Arabia, that Jordan, UAE, Qatar, that they're considering taking action themselves in Syria because they're frustrated, and we're going to talk about this coming up a little bit later. They're frustrated with the U.S. response. And what you were just saying reminded me so much of President Bush, and he would say, we need to get them over there so that we can lower the chances of them hitting us here. That is not something we've heard articulated by this president. We do not see him getting on television and saying, we need to get them over there so that they will not come get us over here.
In 2004, when I gave a speech at the Republican convention, I said I will be eternally grateful to President Bush because in the days after September 11, when I was mayor, I was told to get ready for a dozen attacks.
Yeah.
And President Bush put us immediately on offense. We used to be on defense. Remember, we didn't respond to the coal. And I believe that's what kept us safe. So whatever you think of President Bush, I happen to love him, but whatever you think of President Bush, this man kept us safe. And those people who got hurt and died and injured, they kept us safe by keeping this war in Iraq and keeping it in Afghanistan. When you're fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq, you can't be planning attacks on the Mall of America.
We've had 7 or 8 arrests of ISIS-related people in the whole New York City and Boston area.
You're also gathering enormous intelligence when you do that. The lack of military presence also means we are deprived of intelligence. And since this president has opted for drone strikes, that deprives us of even more intelligence. We're not with the people there, listening to the gossip. We're not arresting the terrorists and questioning and getting their information.
We don't have our ear to the ground.
So we don't have the kind of information that we had, let's say, 6 or 7 years ago when we had 100,000 troops there. They gather a tremendous amount of information.
Our law enforcement's got their hands full here at home. And Rudy Giuliani, thank you very much for being with us. Happy 4th of July.
Hopefully we pray for a safe 4th of July.
We absolutely do. I'm with you on that.